So do you have to do a lot of that with clients? Because you're composing music for film and television, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I do a lot of stuff over the internet, yeah, because I'm based in Thames.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so there's lots of sending stuff back and forth, and there's lots of Skype conversations, but I try and get in the same room with them whenever I can.
Yeah. I have to say, your room is really cool. Like, instruments and shit everywhere. It's awesome.
Yeah, shit everywhere, I think, is about an accurate description.
It looks great. I thought my room looked cool, but my room looks like shit compared to yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, it has its moments. It's sometimes it's way worse looking than this, but it's functional anyway.
Yeah.
So what are you working on at the moment? Are you working on a new film or TV?
At the moment, I'm doing two main projects. One of them is the sort of docudrama about the Pike River disaster.
Oh, okay.
Which has a lot of music. And the other is an Australian show called 800 Words for Channel 7, a sort of a comedy drama sort of thing. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite an eclectic range of, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a way, it's the comedy drama that's more of a challenging process, partly because there's so many episodes, so it's just like a constant cycle. But it's the Pike River stuff that I have the nightmares about, going to find the bodies and stuff. It's definitely, it's gotten into the system a bit, as these projects tend to do.
Yeah. Is that how you try and inhabit you get a visual kind of thing in your head about what you're wanting to go, where you're wanting to go with the music, and that keeps you awake at night?
Yeah, it does a bit. I mean, I definitely try to immerse myself in the... Because, those decisions are sometimes the most important ones. What's the sound of this project going to be? And to get that, hit that on, sort of to nail that, I think you need to really go into the vibe of the whole project, and that's quite a full on process in some ways. It's just an imaginative process, but yeah,
method composing.
Yeah. Like when I was doing Harry, the sort of detective thing, I mean, he was a very depressed man, and yeah, that was pretty.
Oh, that was the one with Oscar Knightley?
Yeah, that's right. And that was a full-on project, because it was just like making the music even more unhappy, and we can even go sadder and darker. And it was like, wow, I didn't know I could go that sad and dark. But it's all part of the fun. I mean, that's what's nice about this kind of work, is it's project-based, and then you do something that's funny or whatever, and then
And do you write a lot of stuff? Like, is there a lot of content that you write that you then you have to get a lot done, a lot written, and then choose in the end, like, you find where you want to end up with it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's because it's collaborative. The director or producer is always involved with that sort of culling, and the editors too, that culling process. So it's like I send them a whole bunch of stuff, and some of it sticks and some of it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then it might be the case that some of it's been used a lot while they cut it, but then I get on board once the pictures lock and go, I don't like that piece anymore, or it's coming apart from the pictures now somehow, and so go and weed it all out, and that can be quite a painful process. But
that composer-director relationship is really important, isn't it? Having that trust. Do you work with the same directors because they trust your instincts, or are you finding new people coming on board, new clients all the time?
Well, I mean, it's such a precarious kind of job. I don't feel like there are definitely people have worked with repeatedly, producers or directors, and it's great when you get that feeling of, well, if they have a musical challenge in this project that they're working on, they'll probably come, give me a phone call. That's a great feeling when there's that sort of mutual trust there. But I think the trick with anyone in the film industry in New Zealand is you always feel like you're just starting out. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's always will there be a second film? You know,
Right.
and stuff. And I think it's very true for composers too. I don't feel like, oh, I've got all these great clients, and then there's these new people coming in the door. It's like, will I ever get another phone call? You know?
Yeah, that's the entertainer's life, though, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. That's right. That's
and
what,
have you ever worked with directors who don't really have a musical language, and you've got to sort of interpret what they're saying? You know, it's easy to say, well, we need to make it sadder, but it could come down to the palette of the instrumentation you've used, right? Or
yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, in a way, it can be worse when the client speaks musical language, because what I've noticed, and I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but directors, a lot of them have musical experience, you know, or at least the kind of people that listen to a lot of music, like we all are. But many of them have been in bands and stuff, and write music and stuff. And so I almost haven't met a director who doesn't think that they're really musical, and that's what sets them apart from other directors. It's like, you know, so they all feel that they know music, and that can be a positive thing. But the more musical the conversation gets, the further it strays from being about the film or the TV show or whatever. And I think that can get into problems quick. I think that we need to do the job properly and to have the collaboration done at its best. I think it's best if we're talking about like the emotions of the characters and what we're trying to say always, rather than how we're trying to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So is it the sort of thing where you almost don't want people to be consciously aware of the music because they're lost in the experience of watching it? Is that the way you think?
It depends on the project, you know. I mean, that's definitely one school of thought, is if people are noticing the music, it's not doing its job. And I think that can be right, but sometimes you want music to poke its head up and just be awesome as well. And it depends a lot how the music's being used. Like, I mean, there are films in which music acts as a sort of a curtain where you don't have any music, and then you've got these big pieces of music and the sound effects get faded out, and it's just like in the music montage, and then there's a whole lot of a big space without any music, and then there's another one of these sort of curtains, and then you definitely want people to notice the music, you know, you want music to sort of draw them into the story even more. But then there's underscore where it just sort of bubbles along in the background, and you don't want people to be like, hey, great music, you know, they should be the dialogue and stuff. So.
I think it's Steven Spielberg who said that, you know, the film is 60% what is shot and then 40% music, you know, in a lot of ways. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, I feel very lucky when I get to work on a project, because I think it's a big, you know, there's what's going on the screen. That's cost a lot of money and been a lot of work for a lot of people putting that on the screen. And then you get to like blitz this music all over it, you know, and it's such a big part of the collaboration. And it's a kind of grave responsibility, I think. And it's very it's a privilege, I think, to be able to join in that way.
Yeah, it's almost as important as the cast, isn't it? Like, I'm thinking of great movie scores like Back to the Future and Indiana Jones and stuff like that, which we probably all grew up watching. And you hear the music and it transports you back in time, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it's like all the different elements of filmmaking. You know, the costumes are so important. You know, if that film can be ruined by really lame costumes, or especially if it's set at a particular imaginary place or an old time or whatever, everything has to be, you know, top of its game, I think, and it's definitely one of those factors.
I'm sure at some point we will get to talk about your other side, the Supergroove and so forth, but I do want to delve a little bit deeper into this, because film and music is a big passion of mine. Yeah. Did you go and learn? Did you go and train for this anywhere? I don't know that there are any schools in New Zealand that teach film composing as such. Maybe John Tharsos does some down at Victoria Uni, but
I believe that's right. Yeah. No, I didn't do any formal training. I mean, that sort of didn't exist much in my day. It was just starting to emerge in places like California and stuff. I think they were starting to do film composing courses. but we certainly didn't have anything like that here. And I mean, the funny thing about those courses is most of the people who's, like those iconic scores you mentioned, they're not people who came out of film composing courses, you know, people who came out of random bands and drama school and conservatories of music and, you know.
Yeah, John Williams was a jazz composer, wasn't he?
Exactly. I mean, he was Henry Mancini's pianist for a long time. And, yeah, so I, like a lot of my heroes, didn't have any formal training, so I was just doing bands. And I guess I worked at a recording studio when I left school, and I left school pretty early on. And my job was like finding sound effects and library music, so production music to go with people's projects. And that was when I think I first started thinking in terms of how we're going to solve this problem for the script or for these images. And I got a chance to do a jingle pretty early on. Jingles are sort of different because they're not storytelling in the same way. It's more like providing some music to go with this, you know, ad. But yeah, the first working really with picture and trying to think in those terms was back at Mandrill Studios with my production music going, does that work?
Right, yeah.
And yeah, it was a good...
It's an art form, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's a very interesting art form. And you know, the greatest music doesn't always work the greatest with the pictures. And that's a thing that I think a lot of musicians struggle with. It's like, but the music is awesome. Why does when I put it with the pictures, and why does the suckier music really work when I put it with the pictures?
but when you do find that right marriage, it's something special. It becomes, the two parts separate are one thing, but put them together and they become this whole new amazing piece of art that you find. And your Supergroove is notorious for having amazing music videos that go with music. So it's sort of the other way around. The music video is made to really enhance the music as such. But I also wanted to just ask, actually, are you a member of the Film Composers Guild?
No, I'm not. I guess I got an email about that early on when they were just first forming, and I sort of had a few questions about it, and I mean, I'm not much of a attender of meetings and all that sort of stuff. And I think there's, in a way with screen composing, there's two separate industries. They're related, but there's definitely two these days. One is screen composing, and the other is selling things to aspiring screen composers. And I think that second industry is actually outstripping the first in terms of the amount of dollars involved. And so I guess I have interesting or boring reservations to do with how these industries relate to each other and stuff.
Right.
Because to me, being a screen composer, it's like being I think it was Cliff Martinez, the Hollywood composer, who's a great composer, but he said when he first arrived in LA, when he was the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, everyone was either a drummer or a guitarist. These days, everyone's a screen composer, you know.
Right.
And he says, saying you're going to be a screen composer is like saying you're going to be a magician or something, you know. It's a very obscure sort of strange job, or like a abstract artist, or conceptual artist or something. I mean, it's a tiny little niche, but of course, selling gear to people who want to be screen composers, all the great sample libraries and stuff, I mean, that you can make megabucks out of, because there's in every high school there's probably at least 10 kids who want to be a screen composer. That's where the money is.
I heard about the gold rush back in San Francisco all those years ago, and the people that made the real money were the people that went there and sold them the tools.
Exactly.
All the painting tools. Yeah. But I'm curious to know, when you're starting work, do you actually have the movie playing and then you're writing to the visual side of it, or are you writing music quite separately and then applying it afterwards? Like, how does that work?
I should also say that I, just to finish that thought, I think that the Screen Composers Guild, what they do is really good. and I think more and more it seems to be a really positive thing that's, enabling a lot of people, and it's really cool. But I'm just a sort of a slightly grumpy troll who lives out in the forest and does not work, and I'm sort of just waiting to see if I want to be involved until see how it plays out a little bit.
Yeah, fair call.
But yeah, I do have them. So it depends. I mean, if it's locked, if the pictures are locked, I obviously have them going the whole time, so I don't do anything without the pictures.
Yeah.
It's all just about working to picture. I keep looking up there because that's where my screen is, and it's got pictures on it right now.
Right.
But if it's not quite locked, I do often ask for a bit of raw sort of offline footage, that they've shot, or I even have pictures sometimes if they've taken shots of possible locations or whatever, and I'll have those on the screen just giving me the vibe while I work. So when I was working on Bombshell, the one about the bombing of the Rainbow Warrior, I found some pictures of both the Rainbow Warrior after it had been bombed and nuclear testing stuff, and also the French secret police headquarters in Paris. It's quite an amazing modernist building, and so I had pictures of that up while I was working, and I just found it sort of kept me, in the zone. I didn't sort of stray out into kind of the Bourne supremacy vibe too much, even though I love that.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should. I'd love to really dig deep into your the other side of Karl Steven's, the Supergroove stuff. So, how did you, when did you first start playing music or knowing that music's something you wanted to do? Were you very young or high school?
Yeah, no, I was 10 and I decided I wanted to be a musician. I don't know quite what I thought it meant at the time, but it was just I'd done a piano lesson and I loved it, and I thought, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to do piano lessons the rest of my life. And so that was kind of it, really. And I've always been a bit single-minded in that way. And so I just got obsessed with it and lost all my closest friends because I just talked about music all the time and synthesizers mainly. With a synthesizer, you don't even need a saxophone player. You just put up the saxophone sound. Boy, I found out that wasn't true. But anyway, so and then the next thing I wanted to do was form a band, because that was what you did when you were a musician. And but I found that doing that with sort of 12-year-olds, I just couldn't even I couldn't negotiate the social exchanges necessary. People thought I was joking. People didn't know what you're talking about. People were like, "Oh, you want to be a musician like Mozart?" And yeah, so it was just too difficult. And so I just got into synthesizers and doing my own sort of fooling around in my room. And then when I was a teenager at high school, that was when, there was a school orchestra, and I started meeting people who could play, and eventually people who took music as seriously as I did. And basically that was the sole criterion for people who ended up being in Supergroove, I suppose. It was people who took music super seriously, and I was like, I want to work with that person because they're into music in the same way I am. And and that's how it kind of unfolded. And the odd friend like Tim, I'd sort of persuaded to take up an instrument.
And the whole band were they all going to you were all going to the same school? Is that how you all met?
Yeah, we were going to Seddon High School. Now it's called Western Springs, pretty much. And then a few of us started moving out to Selwyn, and I eventually did too. And we heard of like this guy at Selwyn College who had to stop going to camp and go home from camp because he missed his guitar too much. And I thought, we need that guy in the band.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
the guy.
Created the bridge to Ben Shasha over at Selwyn. And then we didn't have a drummer for a long time, and we actually played with the drummers of the bands that we supported. Like we supported the Karuba Blues Brothers, and so we just borrowed their drummer. Which is a unusual scenario, but luckily
I've heard of people sharing drum kits, but not drummers.
Will there be backline, a drummer?
Yeah.
So when did Paul join the band?
Well, he was a student of the Karuba Blues Brothers drummer, Mike Abbott.
Okay.
And he just said, look, I've got this amazing student out at Linfield College who's really young. He'd be great for you guys. And so we invited him over to my house, and we had a rehearsal in living room. My long-suffering mother, or sort of more the dining room, actually. She made herself scarce, and we were playing away and jamming, and then we said, drum solo. And then he just did this completely insane, awesome solo, and we all just stopped playing because we were just too amazed at what he did. And he, what went wrong? And we were definitely in the band, like, this is awesome. So yeah, that was how we ended up working with Paul, and he was obviously an amazing musician to work with.
And Supergroove, had such an interesting and unique sound, and at the time it was unlike really anything that I think this country had put out. And did the sound, was it simply just a combination of the players, and did it take shape relatively early, or did you start off sounding like something else and then sort of get there later? Or
well, we started off as a blues covers band straight out. I mean, it was blues. It was more like the Blues Brothers,
right?
Which is not blues. It's that sort of soul stuff that Belushi liked. And yeah, so we sort of did that kind of stuff, and then the soul stuff gradually, we liked the funkier soul stuff more, and so it sort of went more into the James Brown sort of direction, but none of us could play that well. And then we kind of discovered hip hop in a way, and that there was this intersection between the James Brown stuff that we liked and the hip hop stuff that we liked, and so. In a way, what we were trying to do as a band was make hip-hop music, but with a live band, which I guess a lot of other bands did, but not so much in New Zealand at that time. So yeah, it was a gradual process.
Do you see the emergence of, this might be controversial, but stereogram as a complement to that? Or?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't see music as something that's all about these kind of complete innovations and this newness of this original new voice, I mean, there's a bit of that definitely, but there's also a lot of, hey, listen to what these people are doing, and isn't this cool, and can we do something a bit like that? And then you experiment, and it's more like science in that way, that you kind of stand on the shoulders of giants, I think, who put the snare on the 2 and the 4 first? I mean,
yeah.
It's great to innovate, but it's also great to sort of explore areas that other people have been exploring, and you sort of join in and contribute something. Yeah,
I think it's great that you say that, standing on the shoulders of giants, because I would actually equate a lot of bands having done that from you, taking the inspiration from you guys. And was it 93, 94 you guys came out with Traction?
Yeah, I think it was 93 or 4.
And to me, that was the moment that New Zealand music you started listening to it going, we can actually do this as a world-class band.
Yeah.
They sound amazing. And then from there, it opened the door for so many other bands to come through.
And it also wasn't obviously copying another. It wasn't like, here's a Nirvana ripoff.
Yeah.
It was its own thing.
Which was big at the time.
Yeah.
So,
I
I was playing in a covers band, and we were doing Supergroove songs,
Right. Yeah.
at the time.
And so how did you guys, like, as young guys in the 90s, how did you start listening to James Brown? I mean, that's really cool, but also quite strange when most of the world at that point was listening to Nirvana.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, part of it was just like our intermediate schools and high schools and stuff in central Auckland. I mean, it was kind of bands like New Edition and stuff, that was what was being played at the school discos and stuff. It wasn't like rock music.
Right.
And at the time also in Auckland, I mean, there's a big nightclub scene. So there weren't band-type bands playing at band-type venues. A lot of the time when we toured New Zealand, in fact, we had to take... Well, yeah, we always, early on, had to take staging and PAs, and we were having to convince nightclubs that they could have a live band and people would still show up. It was very out at the time.
Were you charging the venues? Or were you just doing door sales? Or?
We're just doing door sales.
Yeah.
And so in a way, we were trying to make this kind of like drum machine type music. But live, and so it was definitely that tradition rather than the rock tradition that we came out of. It was only when we started playing sort of with punk bands and stuff that we discovered the importance of the distortion pedal and stuff. Because some of the time, I mean, we were kids, we would go into these venues like in Christchurch and stuff, and we were a little bit scared of these sort of audience full of these older people with, mohawks and shaved heads and tattoos. Yeah, exactly. And we were like, man, we're going to have to really kind of bring the hardcore shit night, because otherwise they're going to beat us up. I think we had this idea of what was going on, but it did mean that we kind of got into this heavier stuff just through playing live and by playing to audiences who were into that sort of heavier music. And then the sort of the switch was flipped, and I started listening to Pantera and everything, and that became a positive influence on the band's music as well. But yeah, I mean, as always in my life, I think you just follow your ears. You know what I mean? So we just like the music we liked, just like everyone does. You know what I mean?
But I find it interesting though that I mean it's so easy for people to just accidentally replicate and limit their own imagination. Like what you said earlier about why do drum patterns always seem to lay out the same way. And like I love the Police, I love Stuart Copeland and his approach to playing. It was such a simple change in the mechanism of playing, and yet it totally revolutionized drumming. And the way that you guys essentially had two front men and a horn section, and yet you like played with intensity, and it was like obviously influenced by funk and stuff like that, but it was also rock and roll. It's interesting to me that it seemed to be a very open imagination that you guys must have had.
Yeah, I guess it is like you say, that it was to do with a bunch of people in the band and the sort of convergence of our tastes as well. So there were things that I was into that no one else in the band would be particularly into. So like just total outright punk music. Yeah. Probably that was more something that I was interested in than anyone else in the band. But I could add a little bit of that flavour to the point where it was tolerated by the other members.
Right.
And I think we were all, and that was a good thing, because we could each do that. Shay could bring, some really beautiful vocals and stuff that would not be in any music that I was listening to probably, but is such a positive influence in the sound of the band. And, and Joe was very into sort of folk and quite sophisticated songwriting. And quite introspective songwriting, and he was always trying to push that bandwagon, if you like, and that was a really good influence, but it was always sort of tempered by the other members in the group, and I think that's what led to that kind of flavour that it got, which is, it's a pretty eclectic sort of weird sounding band,
and good teams know how to capitalize on each other's strengths, don't they?
I would never say that we were a good team back in those days.
Right. I was heading to that question.
Yeah.
Terrible. But at least creatively, it seemed that you guys, like for example, you and Shay were both great, but in different ways. And I never got the impression that you were trying to compete with each other.
No, that's true. I mean, we knew. We survived creatively, the seven of us, for a time.
Right.
During that time, it was, producing some interesting stuff at times. And I think, in a way, the key to it was the live show. And the live show, that's when we were all in our element, working together, really, doing what we did best, I think. And, there was no sense of competition there. It was like, now we know what we're doing. But that took a long time to reach that point.
It's funny, how some of those things behind the scenes can be either dramatic or there could be friction, but as soon as you hit the stage and you're doing what you guys do best, as you put it, the music, that takes over, and that's the most important thing, delivering to your audience.
Yeah, that's right. I think we had a good sense of that. We developed over time a good sense of that kind of stagecraft, which I think is really important, and just that respect for the audience, and trying to make it a real moment, Yeah.
And I think where that question was going is, where did it all go wrong? But I guess
it's a very diplomatic way of asking.
But it didn't necessarily all go wrong. But there was when Shay had left the band, and you guys did an album after that, and then
Shay was kicked out of the band along with him. So, but I mean, where it went wrong in a way was we were being toured within an inch of our lives in '95 by the record company, we were up for it. We wanted to do that, but I don't think we had a sense of the toll that would take. So we were all quite depressed. Well, no, we were all darn depressed. Mm-hmm. And, at various points of survival mode.
Right.
Yeah.
And then instead of sending us home when in the European summer, when there was about a month break, they said, "Oh, look, it'll be cheaper. We'll just put you up in a farmhouse in Stanbridge where, like, take that, do this songwriting and stuff." Right. And status quo come to rehearse and so on. And we thought, oh, well, farmhouse sounds pretty cool. And, to be honest, we didn't have any choice in the matter anyway. So, okay. And I think that not going home then and, trying to work on this new material in England after being traumatized by the experience of playing with all these crossover bands we didn't like in festivals in Europe and stuff, we were in a bit of a knee-jerk reaction sort of place. So that definitely was difficult creatively. And also then the other thing that happened that year was we went home for like 4 days to New Zealand. This is after months away. And then they sent us off on another Australian tour, which was the shittiest Australian tour known to man. It felt like we had to, one by one, I remember Joe saying it felt like we had to play to every single person in Australia and convince them that they love the band individually. And, no, we don't like it, I mean, the small town Australia, we did not go down well at all. They didn't like the rap thing. They didn't like the whole hip-hop kind of thing. It was like, this is not, what kind of rock music is this? We had to cut sets short and stuff. It was grim. But anyway, So we were all super depressed by that stage. And then I think the sort of paranoia and misery all started setting in, and it led us to a very kind of dark time where, people started forming paranoid groups and stuff. And
like Survivor, you had your own factions. And
it was. And I think really now, looking back at it years later, we were just so young and so out of our depth and so confused by our surroundings, and also fearful of hurting one another too. We had a pretty dysfunctional band culture where we were, quite mean to each other and jokey, like it was like kind of like high school basically.
Right. Yeah.
Like a nightmare. And that was a pretty not very supportive environment. So there were band members, who were gay and worried about coming out in front of the rest of the band in case they'd be, mocked and all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
And, and I think that led to some very bad decisions, which were obviously losing Shay, which was terrible. And that was largely just paranoia. It's like, he doesn't want to be in the band anymore. He's going to do his own thing. We have to dump him before he dumps us. That sort of stuff. And that was totally, it turned out to all of our surprise and horror, that was all totally false. Shay was just doing his thing, just the same as we were all trying to survive. And but the good thing that came out of it was Shay's wonderful career.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean,
Chains and To Be Specific and the Navigator album. I mean, God knows.
Groundbreaking records.
That's right.
Yeah. 20 years since Chains came out, isn't it? This year?
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that in a way it was really good for him to be, in terms of artistically, I think he was able to do some amazing stuff that probably we would have held him back if we had, stayed together as a group.
I'm just curious to ask, the EP Tractor, where did that fit into this? Because I love the EP, by the way. I think it's awesome. I feel a bit embarrassed about some of the songwriting on that, but no, man, it's awesome. It was so edgy.
Yeah, it was. That was us just trying to do something new and different. And
I always liked how on the first song you couldn't make out one fucking word. But it was great. It was awesome.
What's the first song? Is it that Scone Farm one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's first. Yeah, yikes. That's our heaviest song, I think. Tim wrote the riff for that. Tim Ben. That was Joe and I went down to Dunedin and stayed in Portobello for a few weeks, and ostensibly we were meant to be writing songs. Instead, we both experimented with starting smoking and managed to achieve that goal. And it was so cold down there. Drank a lot of wine. None of us have been big drinkers or partiers or anything, but
and it is a fact that smoking does keep you warm.
Well, you set something on fire at the end of the day. And you've got a moment of.
I actually remember having that conversation with another musician. We were standing, I think we're at a train station somewhere in the middle of the North Island in the mid-90s having a cigarette. And yep, this definitely warms us up. Makes no sense at all.
Any kind of addiction, I think, is your brain is reinforcing every illusion it has to offer.
That's right, yeah.
It's slimming, it's warming,
it's social, it's meet new friends.
Fun, yeah. But, so... and
endorsing smoking.
Yeah, we worked on that those songs then, and Next Time was a good one that came out of that batch. I think I came up with a bunch of that, walking over Hopetown Bridge, as I did a lot in my early adult life. That's an interesting, we were trying to keep it brave, and keep experimenting with our sound, was important to us. And so I think that is not artistically extremely successful, but, you got to keep doing what you do and keep trying and putting out music. And then the second album, hey, wow, I mean, that's a very controversial little number. But I'm quite proud of that album, actually. I think we did a good job of doing something very different from what anyone ever thought Supergroove would do.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a different, like a left turn.
Yeah.
How did it perform? Not that it matters, but how did it perform, sales-wise?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, you don't see much money even if it goes great. So I'm sure it was a massive failure.
Hang on. So you don't see much money if it goes great? Whatever do you mean? So you were signed with BMG, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Record companies recoup their expenses out of your percentage of the,
such as month-long farm stays in Europe.
Yeah, that's right. And so, we had a deal where I think we earned 12.5% of every, 100% of
wow.
net.
And of that 12.5%?
Yeah, and that was considered a great deal at the time. That was like,
really?
Wow, awesome. That's above 8, man. That's 12.5%. Woo, you guys. And then out of that 12.5%, that's where they recoup their expenses from. So if they, I'm making up examples, but do TV ads or something. It's like that might cost them, $60,000 to do some TV ads. Well, where are they going to make that money back from? Your 12.5%. It's not from the
87.5.
Yeah. So then it becomes rational for a record company to, every time the band's about to recoup, spend a bit more money on promotion or spend a bit more money on touring or whatever, because you'll sell more records and then you'll keep skimming your 87.5% off the top and pocketing it. And, so keeping the band in debt is quite an important strategy that's always served the music industry very well.
And so what are your views on, how do you feel about the music industry now? Because it's even worse for new bands coming through, isn't it? Like 360 deals and...
Yeah, I don't know that much about it. I know that people get higher cuts percentage-wise now. And I do think 360 deals are rather terrible. They used to be pretty much illegal back in our day. They were certainly advised against. I think it's a better situation for artists now in that, use Bandcamp, You don't need a record company.
Yeah.
Music's cool. Just do gigs and sell it at venues and sell it online. And, basically the record companies are just standing in line to take your money from you. Or take the people who like you's money, want to give to you, and So I'm a believer in the sort of independent style of approach. Bands like Fat Freddy's Drop. They've done a really clever thing and keeping control over their stuff. They actually make money from record sales. It's like, what? Yeah, and I've had good experiences with labels like the Swiss indie label Voodoo Rhythm. Where they just press the records for you and they give you a chunk of them and you keep the money from those that you sell over across the stage to the venue punters, and that's was a very positive system. Whereas all my experiences with major labels and subsidiaries of major labels were way less wonderful for me as an artist, I guess.
Yeah. And so did you then find other ways to diversify your career, and is that how you moved into the film music business, or were you always doing that alongside of your rock star career?
My rock star career, yeah, I was always doing that alongside, because I was passionate about it early on. I mean, that's, I think, I think you need to be passionate about screen composing to do it, because it's a lot of work. The money is often bad or non-existent. It's very competitive because there are a lot of musicians who want to, as you say, diversify into that field. Yeah. I remember my publisher saying when I was about 20, and I said, I'm keen to get into film composing. He's like, don't bother. Everyone wants to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, publisher. But, so I was always doing it, and I was more or less serious about it at different times, and then I got very serious about it when I sort of got back from England and stopped being involved with academic work. I
wonder if now might be a good time to reveal to you that I actually founded the Screen Composers Guild.
I know. I know.
You did, okay. But actually, for that one of those reasons you said, for the very reason that I found people were undercutting me doing gigs. You know, and it's like, man, we can't survive if we undercut each other.
Yeah, I think that lots of what you guys are doing is good. It was.
I'm not with it anymore. I left last year, but
right. I agree. I mean, it's a savage industry. That's why I think I don't really subscribe to the idea that it's that smart a thing for musicians seeking to make some money to diversify into screen composing. I think you have to be. I think the only reason to do it is because you are obsessed with film.
Passionate, yes.
Yeah. But and I've thought that as well. I mean, you can argue that there's nothing intelligent ever about pursuing a career in the arts. If you're looking at it, like if you take it to Dragon's Den, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no exclusivity, there's total saturation, too much competition.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's a vocation, you have to want to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great reason for doing it, you know what I mean? If people are passionate about film and about music and film music, absolutely, those are the people we should have doing the film music. And there are loads of those people, and there are loads of those people doing great stuff. And because I like it as much as a fan, as producer of film music. I watch films all the time, and I am crazy about the music for them. And it's awesome. But I think the idea of pursuing it for the money, it's like there are way better ways to make money in this world. That's a terrible way to make money.
Totally. Yeah.
But, and there's the new award that's part of the Silver Scrolls now for film composing or television screen composing. So that's a new thing. And I'm not going to say that the Guild had anything to do with that directly.
The Guild totally had everything to do with that. I mean, it is a good thing. It's nice to get a prize occasionally because, often that's that and your credit zooming past at 1,000,000 miles an hour is all you get out of these things. It's certainly an interesting job, and I do like it very much. Feel very lucky to be doing this work.
Have you and Joe collaborated on anything?
Well, he's strange.
Other than Supergroove?
I mean, yes, we have lots of stuff, but because he's a director, and he's made 2 short films now, but neither of them have score, unfortunately. They both have just commercial songs in them. But what I've done is I've helped him by doing the music supervision for them.
Okay.
But one day we long to work together on a score and a film because he writes great scripts. Right. And he, like me, is someone who's just obsessed with what he does and, makes the necessary sacrifices for that sort of creative lifestyle. Which is what it takes, I think.
So, and was it about 2008 that Supergroove reformed for a few shows and no new music but playing live?
Yeah. I mean, we have written some new songs, but we haven't been bothered recording them. So we've been live for about nearly 10 years. Yeah, because it was the end of 2007, I think we did our first shows with Crowded House.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's been great, actually. I mean, we're getting along better than we ever did back in the day, and just keeping it casual and sort of family reunion style. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure to.
And was there a period after the original stage of Supergroove where everyone sort of went their separate ways and had a break from each other for a few years?
Yeah, I mean, did not speak for 10 years or so. Like I never saw Shay. The last time I saw Shay was literally in the lawyer's office when, all the bad shit was going down. And that was a horrible trauma which I carried with me, and he did too, I think. And so that was something that I was agonising about for a good decade or so.
Which is a shame, because you've achieved this great thing together, and then it's this kind of tainted view on it looking back.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was a very bleak time. And it was great to finally all get in the same room and go like, oh, wow, you guys will be a presence, and we will be a presence in each other's lives, despite, our struggles and bad stuff in the past. So that's what the reunion's been about for us.
And who pitched the idea for the reunion?
Well, it was Crowded House. It was Neil said, why don't we see if Supergroove wants to support us on this tour? It was a reunion for them too.
Right. Oh, of course. Yeah, but that makes sense.
And it was just the timing was right. I was living in England at the time. Nick was living in France. Ian living in Australia. But, and we'd had said no to previous similar ideas. But, yeah, just sort of the magic, enough time had passed that it was like, hey, I think we're all adults now and, can actually heal some of these wounds that we created for each other.
And was it a relatively easy process after that to get back together and get all the cogs turning again?
It was quite easy. I mean, they're great musicians, everyone in the band. The interesting thing was when we first started playing, it sounded like a Supergroove covers band. It was like, it's right, but it's not the same. What's wrong? And we were a bit like, is this going to, really be kind of a watery version of the band that we're able to concoct again? But then what we did is we decided to play really loud. And so that's Supergroove sound. So
yeah, that 90s edge.
Exactly, yeah. That's my lunch arriving through the window.
Through the window?
It brings it up the drive, which is
right.
Yeah.
And so you were you getting into the film composing right out of like the end of the 90s, out of the Supergroove period?
Even before Supergroove. I mean, my first jingle when I was still in high school for my uncle who worked at an ad agency and wanted a mega cheap jingle. And so that was good. Then working at Mandrill, the recording studio, after I left high school, I would occasionally clients would come in and they wouldn't like any of the production music, or they'd want some instrumental version of Minnie the Moocher to sing over the top of or whatever, and I just sort of do those kinds of jobs, the real odds and sods.
Yep.
And then eventually I got into pitching on stuff, among other composers for TV and things, and and getting jobs, and and that just sort of kept going alongside Supergroove.
Right. And once Supergroove was over, did you miss performing, or were you kind of burnt out on performing for a while?
I was thoroughly burnt out from performing, I mean, the Supergroove show was such an energetic thing that, I mean, it was literally like a trauma waiting for me at the end of each day. I used to look at people when I was on tour and think, these people who are on this ferry or whatever, they just don't have this physical threat that looms over every evening of their life. To kind of just give everything into this physical show. And I thought, God, I wish I could be like one of those people who just like has a cup of tea, wanders around, watch a movie. And so it was great having many years of being one of those people and not performing live. But, it swings and roundabouts. I do. There are times when I really do like to perform. So with the Drab Dwarfs and stuff, that was a great catharsis after being cooped up in university libraries for a bunch of years.
Yeah, so tell us about that group. When did that start out?
It was 2008.
Yep.
I got back from England. I'd written some of the songs in England, and just found a bunch of people who were keen on playing some of that material and exploring that sound, and ended up with working with a great team of people, and it was a super fun experience. And it was a lot more trying to take an approach like the good years in Supergroove. So it was always really important to everyone, being supportive of each other and trying to have a nice time and do fun stuff. And we didn't have band meetings, and we didn't involve lawyers in any serious way. And learning from the mistakes of Supergroove, I guess.
So a lot just a lot freer. Get rid of the shit and just enjoy the art, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about the relationships, and it's about the art. I mean, we ended up getting involved with sort of the music industry a bit, and not surprisingly, it became a lot less fun the more we did, actually.
Right.
Yeah, but, opportunities come up and you sort of go, ooh, this would be good. And, but it's interesting how that happens.
Yeah, we're talking to a lot of people about the changes in the music industry, and how streaming and the digital age and all of that stuff. And it's quite interesting how there's so many different perspectives on these subjects, and in many ways, it's occurring to me actually more as we go that in many ways it's positive, because the music industry as it was actually quite dysfunctional, and we probably won't have the superstars anymore. We won't have like the next Prince probably, but potentially, because we're now all like boutique, essentially we're kind of small business owners, if you like, doing it like you say, we can have our music out on Bandcamp or whatever and just do our own thing. It kind of sets us all free a bit, and also because we don't have to necessarily kiss ass when it comes to like making a song 3 minutes 30 and all of that. We can do whatever the fuck we want,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's definitely pros and cons with this new system, if you could call it that, or absence of a system. And just as there were pros and cons before, I think there's always been people making music. And there always will be, while there's humans, people making music. And I think the important thing is to be making music and not let the sort of industry, whatever that means, the sort of trying to get money out of making music, I guess is what it means, kind of impose too much of anything on that process. So, like I get sad when I see guys like, what's his name, Roger Daltrey, was it, say, we're not going to do a new Who album because there's no music industry anymore. And I think, what, is that why you made music in the first place? Is to like be part of the music industry or to make money from it? Like, there are musicians all over the world spending a bomb on buying gear and making their music and booking a practice space and driving somewhere to, jam with someone. And I think, just because it's more difficult to make a profit out of it now, that should distract us from what's actually important, which is music, and in today's society where so much is about making a profit and investing and what's the return and all that stuff, I think it's quite a really positive and brave thing to do something that doesn't have immediate financial or possibly any financial gains. It's like I do music because music is important.
Music has other value than monetary, right?
That's right. I don't care. I care more about music than I care about money.
Yeah.
That's why I spend all my money on buying music and buying musical gear, and I think hooray for me and hooray for all of us who do that, because that's how you get music in this world.
Right. So I definitely noticed the effect though from like the reality show culture, where there are a lot of young people now who they seem to they want to become famous. They want to be celebrities for the sake of celebrities, and it's almost like they think it's like the golden goose. Like they'll climb up the ranks, end up with a career, make some money, become famous, and yet they're in the music industry, and you kind of think like, I don't know if you actually know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's the way the music industry works it requires a bunch of people lining up to be exploited. And so those shows are doing a good service in sort of populating that queue, I guess. Yeah, it's madness to think that it's like buying lottery tickets as a way of getting rich. You know what I mean? To wanting a career as a pop star to make you wealthy. And I mean, the kind of career that most of these pop stars have is just so tiny in terms of years. You know,
that's right, fleeting. Yeah,
here's your 3 years. I hope you made $1 squillion. But I think that doing music is a good thing, and it enriches people's lives, and learning how to do music is a good thing too. So I think these courses and tertiary courses in music as an occupation, I don't think it'll necessarily kickstart your career as a pop star any more than buying lottery tickets will kickstart your career as a millionaire. But I do think that it will give you skills to pursue your enriching, rewarding passion, and that is a cool thing. Yeah,
it sounds like you've gotten to a very good place. Like a healthy perspective, love of music, and a number of different careers operating at the same time. And you even have someone that passes you lunch through the window.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, I guess what I know is what's important to me, and so I know that making film music, for instance, and making music, that is what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to be doing while I'm on the planet. And they may be dodgy little crappy films for friends, or I might even have to go out and film them myself in the garden. That's what I'm doing, and I'm willing to take the consequences for that. And if that means not having a house and not having a, cozy middle-class lifestyle, I'm willing to, take that poison along with my love of making music and doing music to picture. And that has been a very positive thing, because now I know what I'm about, and this decisions become easy.
Excellent. Hey, we might actually just let you get to eating your lunch. It's probably going cold in your lap there.
I actually have a panini press in the studio, so I heat that up and then I cook the sandwich. It's very good.
Oh, good for you.
This is a guy who's got his life sorted out.
Yeah. You've got a process.
I'm going to take notes.
Requirements. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much, Karl, for talking to us today. You've been really generous.
No worries. Good on you for doing this stuff, and good on you with the Screen Composers Guild too, I should say. I know I haven't signed, but I think that it was a good initiative.
I'm pretty sure we were hunting you down at the time, but seeing as I've left now, I don't care.
Thanks for your time. It's great talking to you.
Cheers, you too.
Yeah,
Bye.
Bye.